Welcome everyone to our stamp making workshop. So today's workshop is all about trying new things and having fun and making some tools for our creative practice. Let me just adjust this real quick. So I'm going to be going over three different types of stamps that we can make. And what I want to do is give you the techniques, and you'll have some time to create one too, but hopefully you can take what you've learned today and apply it and maybe make some more when you have more time. Even though some of these ideas are simple, I actually really like that. I feel like it's really cool to use just what we have and not have to get new things and kind of create our own tools and materials. And even when something is really simple or primitive, it can actually turn into something really interesting and beautiful. And I feel sometimes like even more inspired. It kind of helps me think outside of the box when I'm working in that way. So please try different things. If it doesn't work, that's okay. Then you know it doesn't work and you can try something else. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you can enter it in the chat and I'll be checking it periodically so that and answer your questions. So I'm going to go over the three different techniques. And at the end, we should have some time where you can maybe play around some more, or if you want to just show what you've done, I think that would be fun to see what everyone comes up with. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So I am going to go ahead and pin replace spotlight. So the main screen should be the working screen so you can see what I'm doing here. So for the first glue gun stamp, what we're going to do is just use whatever glue gun you have, glue stick, and then you can use ink or you can use paint once you have your stamp done to test it. And what I have here is just regular parchment paper. And I also have like sticker backing paper. So I do a lot of mailing. So sometimes, when you have the sticker labels, when you take it off, I actually save those pages because you can make different things with it. And I find it to be useful. I will say that for the glue gun stamps, depending, I think, on the type of parchment paper or like wax paper you're using or the glue stick, sometimes the paper may stick to the glue. But if that's the case, what you can do is actually run it under water, and that should help make the paper soft and dissolve it. And then that way you can still peel it off. So if it gets stuck, don't worry. It just takes a little bit more time, but you can still take off the paper and use it. So I have my glue gun plugged in. I'm just kind of getting the excess off. And what you want to do is you can, think of a pattern. I just like to freehand it if you want. Like for this sticker paper, it's kind of thin. So if I have Sharpie underneath it, I can draw a pattern and kind of trace over it. But I'm just going to kind of go with it and start with just a circular pattern. As a sample so you can see what to do. So what I like to do first is just start with whatever outline and then just outline it on the parchment paper or whatever backing paper you have. And you can start with the first shape and then add on to it. So it doesn't have to be all one continuous line because that can get hard. Just make sure when you're adding on to it that the glue is connecting with whatever glue you have on the paper. And what I try to do is not have the glue gun directly on the paper. I have some space there, so it almost looks like it's dripping onto the paper. And that just kind of helps you draw the line, and it also makes the line a little bit thicker. The one thing you kind of want to make sure of is that the lines aren't too thin, because if they're too thin, then you're not going to be able to get enough ink on it. Sometimes the glue also flattens out a little bit. If it flattens out, that's okay. We can always add on to it. But what I like to do is start with a base. So I'm just making a pattern of circles for this one. And so anywhere where I feel like it might be too thin, I'll just go over it or even add another layer so you're building on top of it. If you build another layer, though, make sure that all the other areas have that second layer too, because we do want a surface that's even and the same height so that when you apply the ink pad or apply your paint, it all evenly gets coated on. And when you stamp it, there's not any gaps in it. But again, this is not this material, kind of has a mind of its own, so it might not turn out perfectly, but go ahead and just try one and you can make a small pattern just to test it out, like a small heart maybe or something, and see how it feels for you and how the glue works for you. And any of these little threads, that's okay. We can clean it up once we're done. So I'm just going to go ahead and let this dry a little bit. And right now, as you can see, I'm just cleaning up the rest of the paper. So it should peel off pretty easily. But if yours doesn't, don't worry. You can tear it off of the paper and then run it under some warm or hot water and it'll help dissolve the paper and you can peel it off a little bit easier. Okay. So here is the glue gun. And then here's kind of like, I don't know if you can, it's hard to see, but it's not totally flat against the paper. It should be coming off of it. And it still does feel a little bit hot, but it feels okay. I'm not going to burn myself. So I'm just going to peel it off. And then what I like to do is actually use a flat part. And then this is my stamp. It's still a little sticky on the top, so I'm going to let it sit for a little bit. And then I don't know if you can see that there's like these little threads. So once it dries, it's pretty easy to clean it up. And if you have, let's say, like a big chunk that you don't like on the side, you can even tear it off or use scissors to cut it. And what I like about this is, so there's two ways that you can actually use this stamp and you can decide. So I like using the flat side that was on the paper because I feel like it's smoother and easier to apply ink or paint to. You can also use the top side, but it might just be a little bit bumpier. But I like using ink pad for this. And what I do is, this is the flat side. I actually take the ink pad and I just apply it to the stamp. That way I can see like that it's really coating it or where I need to maybe add more. I'm just going to get a good coating on it. And then you can press down, give it a good press. And then you can, test it out. You can maybe, some stamps, it might be easier to brush on the ink versus doing it the way that I did or using paint. Um, and the other thing too cool about the glue gun stamps is that you can actually use it as a stencil as well. So I like using it to stamp, like how I did, but you can also lay it down and you can take a brush and like add paint to it. And so for this design, for example, it's kind of like like outlines of circles, but then I can also use it as a stencil and add paint to it. And then it can actually help me create the circles as well. So while you guys are working on your stamp, I'm just gonna add some paint so you can just see how that ends up looking. And I will say for these kind of stamps, it might not be as clean as like a regular rubber stamp, but for me, I kind of like that look. So it kind of helps me achieve a more, I would say like messier, maybe less clean look, but sometimes that's what I want. And it kind of gives it a different feel than if it was perfectly neat. So you can also take a brush and paint and then use it as a stencil as well. So you can go ahead and play around with it and try different designs. I've seen you can do pretty intricate ones too, but just be sure that it doesn't break and that the lines aren't too skinny. So the first time I did it on this like label paper, this is just regular parchment paper, and I did test it out, and so it worked the same for me. So I was able to peel it off pretty easily. So I'm going to try a different design, and during this time, you can make your own and see kind of what you come up with. And this does take a little bit of playing around, so don't feel bad if you feel like it's not working out the first time, or maybe you need to, add more layers on it. I think the fun part about this is experimenting and seeing what we can make from it. So I'm going to make a little bit of a thinner, like narrower, almost like floral petal pattern. I'm going to see what that looks like. The other thing too is with these stamps, if you'll really like the design and you're not going to use it as a stencil, you can stick it to some cardboard backing. That way it's not flimsy and it'll be easier to stamp. But I just feel like this is such a cool idea. I never, would have thought that to use a glue gun like this. So when I first discovered it, I thought it was such a cool idea. They do have to be a little patient and let it dry. And then still kind of soft. And then, like I said, if you have a more intricate design, you can use white parchment paper and it should be pretty see-through. So if you have a design that you draw with Sharpie or something, you can put it underneath the paper and then just trace over it with the glue gun. Okay, so I'm going to try this one out and see. And then I always just have some scrap paper to test it out. You can also just have, I also sometimes like having a test paper in my sketchbook. And then that's the page I always use to kind of do imprints or test prints or, test marks. And it's kind of fun at the end when you have, it kind of becomes a page of its own, even though it's sort of like a scrap paper type page. So I'm going to try it one more time. I feel like the nice thing about this is because it is bendable, if you're just using it like how I am and not attaching it to a piece of cardboard, you can, get into those places where the ink isn't really taking and kind of make sure to get the ink there. And then when you press it down, you can also get into those nooks and crannies to get a more continuous line on your stamp. If, like, for example, like mine, I didn't get enough ink on there, but you should be able to work with it and get a better imprint. So sometimes you just kind of need to test it out. And for these type of stamps, I do like using them sort of to create a background on a sketchbook page. I think it's kind of fun to just have different outlines and kind of stamp your page and then see where it goes from there. I'm going to move this paint one. So I'll give you a couple more minutes if you want to wrap up. And if anyone wants to share, feel free. Hopefully it's working and the glue is peeling off the paper that you're using, but sometimes it could just be a little bit of trial and error. The first time I did it, it did not come off at all. So I just had to peel it and be a little bit more patient and run it underwater. That really helped. And then when you are done, just make sure if you want to use your glue gun to help make some of the other stamps that we'll be working on, you can leave it plugged in. Otherwise, if not, unplug it just to be safe and put it somewhere where you're not gonna get burned. And when you're ready, go ahead and clear off your space. Before we move on to the next stamp, I just wanted to show you the sketchbook page that I made using this. It's a bigger version of this circle stamp. So I had an idea to do a beehive type design. And so that's what the first stamp that I tried with a glue gun. So here I was able to stamp it and I really liked how it kind of looked like a hive. So that kind of reminded me, of like bees and flowers. So that helped me develop the design. And then on this top part, I use a stencil in the other, I use a stamp in the other way as a stencil. So this is an example of what you can do with it. And of course, it can look very, all of our work is going to look very different, but I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like when it's finished as a finished piece. Okay, so our next stamp that we're going to be making is going to be using just string and cardboard. And so you can use, cardboard from whatever boxes. Mine's a little bit thinner, but that's fine too. You just want it to be pretty stiff. For the string stamp, there's actually a couple of different ways you can do it. You can, instead of gluing it on, you can actually wrap it around and tie it and create patterns that way. And then you can just like, sometimes what I'll do is get a pair of scissors and just cut a little notch and then just wrap around the string. Again, the kind of thing you just have to watch for is, if you're layering too much or layering in certain areas and not others, some of that might not show up as well when you place ink or paint on it, but you can just try to get in the different nooks and crannies and get the ink on there. And then when you press down, just make sure to press evenly. And I love this because this is really, really simple. So what I do is just have the notches to kind of keep the string in place. And then you can either tie it in the back or you have a glue gun. You can just put a little dot of glue to secure it. But I love that this is so simple, but there's really a lot of designs that we can make with this. I'm just putting the dot of glue on the back. I'm going to hold it down a little bit. So this is one way to do it. And then the other way is to think of a pattern that you want to do. So it's going to be a continuous line. So again, try not to overlap it. It just helps for the even distribution of the ink and your final stamp. But you can use pencil if you want to draw a design. You can then use glue gun to put the glue on it and then add your string to it. Or you can use liquid glue like White Elmer's glue or Mod Podge. I like using that as well instead of the glue gun sometimes. So I'm just going to let this dry and then I'll cool down and then I'll work on my other stamp. So sometimes if you want, if you have an exact pattern in mind, I recommend doing it in pencil first. But sometimes I think it's just fun to see what happens. So I'm actually just, since my glue gun is out, I'm just going to make some squiggly line patterns and then glue my string or rope onto it. And for this type of stamp, when you're using string, something thicker like twine works a lot better, just because there's more height and depth to it. Like if you use thread, it's not going to work because it's just so flat and it won't create any type of height there. So you're not going to be able to really get a good design out of it. You do kind of have to work a little bit faster with the glue gun. So I do sometimes like using the white glue or just white liquid glue. And you can kind of play around with it too, if you're using the liquid glue. And then once you have your design finalized, then you can really press it down and let it dry. But even with the Mod Podge, because it's a little bit thicker, and I'm impatient sometimes, I'll just let it dry really quickly and still test out the stamp and see if it works. So since I have some paint out, I'm gonna use paint for this one and see how that looks. So I'm just using acrylic paint and a really dry flat brush. And I'm putting this paint on in a thin layer and trying it to just get on the part where I want to stamp. But I am kind of messy, so I always get paint on my fingers and everywhere. Okay, So let's see how this works out. And again, this is a trial and error type situation. So, I did a thin layer of paint, but we'll see. Maybe I need to actually put on more. Okay. And then sometimes I like to think of, when it's imperfect, like here it's missing a line, that it's actually a way for us to get creative and it might lead us somewhere else. So instead of having it be so perfect, like maybe that gap ends up being filled up with something else, or maybe you can use it for something that you didn't think of before, add another stamp there, put some paper there for collage. So even when it doesn't come out perfectly, to me, it's fine. And it could actually lead you to a new idea or a different idea that wouldn't have come up. And then the fun thing too about these stamps that we're making, you can definitely mix and match. We can take whatever the glue gun stamp that we did earlier, let this dry, add another layer. And then you can also make different patterns by creating more layers too. So sometimes the stamps are so simple. It's like literally maybe two lines, but then if you layer it and do it in different directions, you'll create a pattern that way. And then I'm going to try to put paint on this one and see how this one looks. I feel like this is, might have some areas where it'll be a little harder for the paint to get through, but I'm going to test it out and see. And it's also kind of fun to experiment with different types of string, or maybe you have lace or something that's more crocheted or has texture. And you can even mix up the string. Like I'm just using this one type of twine, but if I had different kinds of twine that are still the same thickness, it would be fun to kind of experiment with that too, and maybe mix different widths with it, if one's thicker and thinner. So there's like a lot of options that we can try. And I just think it's so fun, especially with stamps. Like you never know what's gonna happen after you stamp it. So it's a little surprise every time of what it is gonna look like. So let's see. So for this one, since I did their vertical lines, I'm actually gonna go back and do horizontal lines and just see what that looks like. Mhm. So instead of like this, I'm gonna do it this way. But yeah, and actually really like how this looks after using it in the two different directions to make some sort of grid. And I'm going to give you a couple more minutes to play around with it, test out your stamps before we move on to our third kind of stamp. And I'm going to clean up my workspace a little bit. Another thing you can do with this type of string stamp is you can take your cardboard backing and cover it with the Mod Podge or the Elmer's glue. So there's a thin layer, and then that way you can sort of play with the string directly on it. And once the glue dries, it'll be clear and it's not going to interfere with the stamp or anything. So that's kind of a fun way to approach it as well. And it kind of gives you more time to play around with the formation instead of, having to follow like an exact line. So that's another way that you can make it as well. Okay, so I'm going to give you another minute. I'm going to just clear off my space and then we will create our last kind of stamp, which I'm very excited about. I feel like there's so many possibilities with each of them, but especially with this last type of stamp. Okay, so we're gonna work on our final type of stamp, and this is our recycled material stamp. And I think this one is so fun because you can use so many different things and really create some items that I feel like you really can't get at the store if you get a regular rubber stamp. So a couple of things is I just went around collecting things that I thought I could use. So I have some, disposable chopsticks. This is a cleaned out yogurt cup, and then just I always feel like there's like lids around, so I got that. And then I also have different kinds of cardboard. So this was just like the thin cardboard I was using. This is the thicker cardboard. And I just wanted to share, if you like the pattern of this, you can peel. Usually it's pretty easy to like see where the layers are and you can peel off the top layer to expose that part and use that. Just be careful to not smash, the areas that are raised. And then you might just have to go in and clean it up and, kind of take the extra little bits off so that it makes a cleaner stamp. Um, but so there's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can use your materials directly and just apply ink, and play around with it. The other idea is to take maybe a bigger piece of cardboard and then start adding items to it so that you're creating a stamp with all these different bits and pieces. The one thing again too is the height difference. So for example, these two lids, it's like, this one's like half the size of this. So if you're going to be sticking these on, the small one's not going to reach when put everything down. So you do just have to be a little bit aware of that. You can definitely stack things. I've had two of these. I could probably stack it to make it the same size. So just kind of think about that when you're creating it. I also love using just packaging materials. So like bubble wrap, and now, they come in different sorts of patterns and shapes. So I really like doing that too. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to combine a couple of these materials into a bigger stamp. And, the bigger the stamp, sometimes it's harder to get an even coating and even stamp when you're doing it. So I am going to cut this down so it's a little bit smaller. So it's just a little bit easier for me to handle. But if you want to make a gigantic one, feel free. I think that would be really fun too. And I'm going to just add some of this cardboard. And I'm also playing around and figuring it out as I go. I like kind of coming into it without a plan sometimes. So I have my glue gun still, working. So I'm going to be using that to adhere the different pieces. And I am going to try to make like a thin layer because I don't want to add any like extra height to it. So here's my cardboard. And then the bubble wrap to me looks like it's gonna work out. It's like about the same size, height. So I'm gonna go ahead and just cut a piece of that out and glue it on. And you can definitely start making and playing around with ideas in your stamp too, while I do this. And then there's some bubbles here that don't have any air in it, so I'm just trying to trim it off. And I think this is going to be my first stamp. And then I have another idea of using the lids, but also actually with these chopsticks, I'm going to try to break it into different pieces and add it onto my cardboard. So that's going to be my next next one that I'm going to attempt. But I'm going to go back to my ink pad and just try this one out and see how this worked. But for something flimsy like the bubble wrap, it is nice to have it on something stiff. That way you can, easily stamp it instead of struggling to like hold the corners and stuff. And when you do have your backing, I always suggest to make the backing a little bit bigger so that there's, edges that you can put your finger on. So unlike me, I already have paint on my hands, but if, it just helps keep everything a little bit cleaner, especially if you get messy like I do all the time. A good press. Yeah, I feel like not bad. I feel like this is probably going to be more faded. I can tell like the plastic takes the ink a lot better. So I could also try this with paint or some other material if I wanted to come out, but I actually kind of like that one is darker and one is a little bit more faded. I feel like it gives it something interesting to look at and to play around with. And then I'm going to try to do my chopstick one. But for this is definitely about playing around. And I love that, like Kim, you have your kiddo there because I feel like they also have such great imaginations and you can really play around with it and see what you come up with. So I don't know if this works, but these scissors are heavy duty. So I'm going to try to just break some pieces because my cardboard is a little bit smaller. I feel like plastic utensils we usually always have somewhere. Those are it's kind of a fun way to recycle them and, not throw them in the trash and have them be used for something else. Wooden skewers too. You can use that because the chopsticks are a little bit thicker, so they're harder to cut. But if you have wooden skewers, you can definitely make thinner and more maybe intricate designs too because they're thinner and easier to work with. And you'll also start getting used to seeing what kind of paints or ink work better with the types of material you're using. I feel like for wood, paint would work a lot better than using the ink pad. So that's what I'm gonna try. And I know it's not totally fitting on my cardboard, so let me see if I can get a bigger one. This is better. And I have never made a chopstick stamp before, so we'll see how this turns out. Okay, feel like this can use some more paint. Okay, moment of truth for me. See if how this turns out. Okay, so for me, I always like it even when it doesn't come out perfectly, but now I can tell like, okay, I can maybe put more paint on here, or I put more paint, it kind of, has more puddles. So if I like that, I can add, just be more generous with it. And I could also try it with different kinds of ink pads as well. I do think it's pretty cool that we can just use things that we have around the house. Also, sometimes I really like saving things that are like circles or using things that are round because it's harder to just create this freehand. So if I find like this is the right size that I like, then I'll just use this as a stencil too, or to also like just even print directly on the paper. If you need to add height, sometimes you can do that with the glue gun by making a layer of glue with the glue gun, letting it dry, and then putting that piece on top. And that can sometimes help to hold it down too. I think I'm going to need to use regular glue for this. I will sometimes also use super glue, but just be careful not to get it on your fingers, which I have done a bunch of times. But I did recently look up how to get like super glue off of your fingers because you know how it gets like a thin layer and it feels all weird. And someone suggested using salt and just like washing your hands with like a lot of salt, putting it in your other palm and like rubbing it against the skin, and it really does work. You have to do it like I had to do it a few times, but I actually did take it off, which was really nice. Actually, this stamp I'm going to use with the wooden one that I made. It's like kind of reminded me of flowers, kind of, or some kind of plant. And to me, art is a lot about the process. I really try to focus on that instead of the finished product these days. And I feel like even, right now we're experimenting. We have our scrap paper where we're kind of testing out our stamps, but sometimes something there can also give you ideas. So even though this might be scrap paper, you can actually cut it out and use it, or um, take that idea and finalize it in your sketchbook or on a formal piece of paper or canvas or something. And also with stamps, sometimes it's like we might want to make a certain shape. Like, for example, we want to make a heart or a star or something like that. But one of the fun things I feel like about stamps is that it can help you create different patterns. So I also try to sort of look for those when I'm playing around with them. So we have about 15 minutes left for the workshop. So please feel free to use this time to finish what you're doing, continue to play around with it. And if anyone wants to share, please feel free. I would love to see. You can also send a picture, I believe, in the chat, or if you don't want to share with everyone, but you just want to share with me, that's fine too. You can always email me as well, and I'll just put my email in the chat. But I always love seeing what everyone comes up with because I have a feeling like what I'm looking at on my paper probably looks really different from like everyone else's. And I think that's what makes art so fun and unique. So no pressure, but if you would like to, feel free. But we do still have 15 minutes left. So I'll check in again like 5 minutes before, but I'm also going to keep on playing with these materials and see what I can make with them.
I can share.
Okay.
I had
Nice.
this paper. It wasn't quite, it's like some kind of paper that came with a package. It's
Oh,
like, I
yeah,
don't
it
know
has.
if anybody's seen this before.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can expand it kind of and there's just like all the little
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
So I had really high hopes for that paper to
Uh-huh.
create like a really neat pattern, but
Uh-huh.
I think I don't have ink pad, so I just
Oh,
use
uh-huh.
paint.
Uh-huh.
And so I think the paint just ended up like getting absorbed into the
Oh.
paper.
Mm-hmm.
But it did create kind of like this. I don't know if you've ever seen like popcorn ceiling.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it kind of created that kind of texture. So it reminded me of like, okay, in the future, if I do like a big painting project,
Uh-huh.
where I need like texture or like
Yeah.
want to do something in the background. So
Uh-huh.
I kind of stamped it all over my,
Oh,
let me
cool.
turn off the blur so
Okay.
that way it
Okay.
shows up better. Um,
Oh yeah.
okay, the yellow part right here,
Okay,
like
yeah. I like
interesting
it.
texture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I when
So,
I oh go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Like when I first, when you were showing I think it's called honeycomb paper or something like that, but that paper,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it would maybe make like a bunch of shapes, but it's kind of cool to see what happened when you imprinted it because it's actually like more subtle, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, it adds texture. So it would be a cool background, or maybe if you're painting some scene and you need to fill it with that texture, you can definitely use
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I'm glad I kept that paper and I kind of discovered a different way, even though it didn't come out the way I had hoped. It came
Uh-huh.
out like I came out pleasantly like surprised
Yeah.
at, a new way that I can use it.
Nice. Yes. Yes. I can definitely see that. That's cool. And then did your hot glue gun stamp work out, or how did you
Yeah, no,
that go?
I put it on wax paper, so I
Oh,
think just the heat made it stick to
oh,
the wax
oh,
paper. So I should
uh-huh.
have used parchment paper
Okay.
instead, which I do have. So
Okay.
I'm excited to try that out in the
Mhm.
future. My string art came out
Uh-huh.
really pretty well.
Uh-huh.
I missed the instructions about the Mod Podge and glue, so I think
Mm.
I'll have to go back and like
Oh, try it
read
out and see.
instructions about
Uh-huh.
how to incorporate that. But I used the cardboard and bubble wrap technique you showed, and that
Oh,
one
cool.
came out the best.
Nice.
So I was really excited about that. I like did a little celebration
Oh, yay.
once I got it.
Yes, yes.
So that was my first stamp that worked out of
Oh,
like all of
awesome.
them. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
I was excited.
Awesome. Awesome. And I will say, the wax paper could be my fault because I did suggest it, but my glue gun is like very old, so I don't think it gets as hot. But I can see it being, like if it's a really good glue gun, how it should be. It might be
Yeah.
too hot to like melt it. So I'm sorry. That was probably my fault because I have done it on
No,
wax paper, but it's probably because my gun is old and not, it doesn't get as hot.
mine's really old too. I've had it since I was a kid,
Oh
so
my
I don't
gosh.
know. Like maybe it's just like a lower quality. I don't
Mm.
know.
Yeah, it just depends. And like I remember too, last time I used parchment paper and it stuck like a lot. So it
Oh,
could just
okay.
be different brands too. I feel like it's always
Yeah,
a little bit of a testing
hit or
experimenting.
miss. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But and then after this workshop too, in addition to this video, I'll also send out some notes too. So like, like the Mod Podge part or whatever, that part will be in there just in case. Because yeah,
Thank you.
try it. Yeah, of course. Thank you for sharing, Dahlia. It's always fun to see everyone's work. So I'm gonna. And even though I know, today these techniques are pretty simple, but I do feel like it's just hard to find time sometimes to create. So I like kind of scheduling these workshops so that we just have time to kind of sit and do this and play around. And then hopefully we can also, this is just a starting point in my eyes. You now have your materials, you kind of have seen how they work. So then you can now try using it, in different pieces or like I love Dahlia's example because it's like now she kind of has this imprint of this texture. So if she's creating a painting or creating a mixed media piece and wants that texture, now she knows where to go to. So it is a little bit of kind of like, to me, exploring and trying different things. And then on your scratch paper too, sometimes what I'll do is I'll keep my scratch paper and I'll make little notes of like what I did because sometimes I can't, like I've tried a bunch of things. And I'm like, okay, if I don't write it down now, I'm probably not going to be able to recreate it as well. Going back, if I go back to it and just look at it. So sometimes I'll do that too. So it is kind of nice to have a sort of I call it just like a scrap page in your sketchbook, like maybe at the very end of it. And it's just sort of like a reference sheet. But yeah, so I want to thank everyone for coming. And again, I will share the recording with you. I will also share just some written notes. Sometimes I feel like it's easy to refer to, then you don't have to go searching for it in the video, but you'll have both. And if you continue to experiment with this, I would love to see what you create. We do have about like 10 minutes left, so I'm not going to close out the session until noon. But if you do need to go, or if you're finished, or you want to clean up or wash your hands or anything, feel free. You don't have to, like, I feel like the bulk of the class is done and these are the lessons. And so if you want to stay on, please feel free. I love that. If you need to head out, that's okay too. But I just want to thank everyone for taking some time to just create and have some fun with it today. Hi. So it's Kim and Ellis, right? I think I'm reading that. Right? Okay, I'm going to make your window a little bit bigger real quick so we can see what you made. Wow. That's so fun. It looks great. Good job.
We've got
Which,
a bunch of glue ones we're waiting to dry.
okay, okay. That's a good idea. Ooh. Ooh, what did you make that star out of? Is that a glue gun one?
The glue.
Oh, great, great. Oh, I see it. Oh, and I really like the one that you're holding, Alice, because the print came out really nice. Ooh. Did you have a favorite stamp that you made today or favorite kind of technique?
My favorite type was like with the glue gun.
Okay. Oh, that turned out really fun. It turned out so good too, because I can see it's the black, like the dark color really came out well. Good job.
The test?
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you're
Bye.
welcome. Bye. Thank you
Bye-bye.
for coming. Bye.
Bye. Jimenez.
And then just don't forget to unplug your glue gun if you still have it plugged in. I definitely have forgotten before, but usually it's in a safe spot on my desk, but now it's more front of mind for me to remember to do that since I've forgotten it many times. Ah,
So much fun, Olivia. Thank you.
yay, you're
Let's see.
welcome.
We'll show one cool
Oh,
one.
okay.
I
I'm
don't know.
gonna
Oh,
let me add you to the spotlight so I can see it.
I don't know. I know, but I'm trying to figure out. I have a
Oh,
fuzzy background, so
oh,
and I don't know
oh.
how to fix it. But one cool thing was the bottom of a water bottle, the bottom of
Oh,
it.
yeah.
That made like a really cool circle. I don't know
Oh,
how to
I love
show it
that.
because for some reason it's not focusing,
Oh,
but
I see. Yeah, because it's
yeah.
I think if you I can kind of see it once in a while when it kind of
Yeah.
unblurs, or if you can unblur the background, but that's
Yeah.
but I love the idea of using the bottle. It kind of almost looks like a floral pattern or something.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. So that was really fun. But great
Awesome.
ideas. Excited to
Thank
keep playing
you.
around with it. Thank you
Awesome.
so
Thank you.
much.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. It was so good to see you.
Oh, you as well. Okay, take
Bye.
care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So if anyone else would like to share, otherwise, thank you so much. And you'll hear from me soon with the recording and just a little recap. But I hope you have a great rest of your weekend and hopefully I will see you soon.